What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Steelhead Alley podcast. I'm Kyle, and as always, I've got my co-host Zack here with me. And today we're rolling into part 2 of our Steelhead trip planning and preparation. Last episode, we talked all about watching the weather, tracking temps, reading flows, and staying warm, dry, and comfortable on the water. In this episode, we're shifting our focus into the gear and rigging, the stuff that really sets you up for success on the stream. We'll break down our time on the vise, preferred leader builds, and how we dial in our terminal tackle. We're also talking through the tools that help you plan smarter, the apps, the resources, and some tips that help along the way. From organizing your gear to dialing in your approach, this is the kind of prep that fills in the gaps before that first cast of the trip. We've got a good one lined up, so sit back, relax, and now, let's get into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Steelhead Alley Podcast, Part 2. We got into the start of the prep and planning. We're continuing that moving forward. Zack, what's up, man? Welcome back. Part 2. You ready to finish this off?
Yeah, man. Getting closer. So these are all things we're doing as we speak right now. All the things we're going to talk about are things that we're actively doing right now, being only 2-3 days away. So it's good. I'm excited.
Me too, man. The countdown is on. We are days away from our trip. We got even an extended half day in. We're really getting after this trip. We're doing almost 3 days total, weather permitting, hitting it hard. And we're still kind of monitoring flows. Let's start there. We are still talking about planning from a perspective of we don't fully know where we're going yet, right?
Yeah, it's kind of still up in the air. Weather permitting in some certain areas could change our first day there.
Yeah, it can change a couple days even in the sense of we may start in one section or hit a certain variety of tribs based off of precipitation, snow that they're getting, and then we may end up on a different section or on a different trib entirely based off of this weather and conditions. So we are literally taking it down to the wire before we decide ultimately what area we're going to stay in. And because they just got rain this past weekend, which was great, keep bumping the flows. And now they're getting some snow, which is awesome. We love fishing in the snow. Can't wait. Hopefully still some up there. But it's all kind of scattered up there. Some have gotten 2-3 inches already. Some have only gotten like an inch of snow. So we're monitoring that. And then potentially more rainfall coming up here this week before we get out there. And depending on how much that hits, combined with snow, we could have high flows quick. But again, we have, like we said, plan A, B, C, 4+ tribs I've been kind of keeping an eye on, and we're going to decide it here in the next couple days. So, Zack, when you're getting ready, do you check gauges? Have a go-to app or anything that you recommend?
Yeah, so honestly, on these trips, I know that you know more about these creeks than I do in general.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep an eye on them all year long almost. You're checking them all the time.
There's only probably 3 months of the year that I don't look at.
Yeah, exactly. You know exactly where those prime flows are. I have an idea, but you really know where these streams need to be. But to check any gauges for any stream that I fish, I only use one app, the River app. It's a very basic app.
That's with the kayaker?
Yep.
Yeah, I like that one.
River app, yeah. And any creek I fish, it shows me pretty much. So I have a bunch of locations, and all it is their CFS and how many feet it's running at. CFS, if you don't know, cubic feet per second, that's just how much water is pumping down through the stream. If you don't know how to calculate that, if you have this app but you're not sure what prime flows are, you go fishing. And the way I figured it out was, like, I went fishing. I was like, wow, I really like the flows that they were at today. This was prime fishing conditions. I look and see what they're at, and that's my mark. If it's anywhere around there, I know it's prime. It doesn't need to be super scientific. If you monitor them all the time, you can take a quick glance in the creek. Like my home creek, I know what it's probably running at.
And to be honest, we can kind of build off of that. There are plenty of books out there, Steelhead books. I have a couple of them. There's a couple out there by some prominent names, Steelhead guides, John Nagy and some others. You look up their Steelhead books, they literally will tell you streams, how fast they drop, estimated times, all that. They will tell you ranges of gauges. So if you don't have the time to actually get on the water and figure it out, you can take shortcuts. The internet has an answer for everything, but there's books out there too. But I agree. You won't really fully know, especially some of that big water, what you prefer. If they're swinging or center pinning, they might like it 500-600 CFS. They might like it bigger. Whereas if we're trying to tight line or throw an indie out there, we're going to like it a little bit tighter, a little bit lower CFS. So getting out on that water is also going to help you determine the range that you specifically want it to be at. That's how we play it. We have ranges based off of the type of fishing we like to do and how that's conducive on those flows.
You can look at the gauges and say, all right, it's running right now 207. And I know that creek that I fish all the time, it's usually a steady drop. Whereas these streams are fishing for steelhead, some of them, you could be drawing the drive there and it's prime. Like, oh man, it's running great. But in the 5-6 hour drive, it could drop fast. So the windows of opportunity, unless they're getting consistent precipitation to kind of keep that flow up, it can rapidly change. So you have to factor all that in too. So you have to be familiar with all that for it to be relevant when you get there.
Great point. Those windows are tighter.
Yeah.
They're shorter, they're tighter. I agree. So I'm with you, dude. I love River App. I think that's a great one. So I have three, four. I have five.
Yeah. That'll do it. That'll get it done.
It does do it, but they all pretty much have a use. So River App is actually really nice, y'all, because it's free and you can set your favorites. It's basically unlimited, I think. So I have a bunch of trout streams, steelhead streams, all favorited. I go right to that in my favorites. It's listed, and then it tells me the gauges on that stream that I've also saved. So if I'm on stream A and it has 5 gauges, I have all 5 gauges right there for me. River App is a great one. Highly recommend it. Now, there's also a couple others that do slightly different things. I like one called Rivercast. Rivercast doesn't have as many gauges or gauge information, but what I like using it for is some of the gauges, it gives predictions. If it's rising or on its way down, it will predict where it thinks it's going to be based off the amount of rain or precipitation it's getting or lack thereof. It's not always accurate, but it'll give you a range of where you think it'll be. And that, again, will help me in my planning and give me a better idea of estimating. I can look at something like that and it'll help give me a better answer.
So will it show you exactly where it's going to plateau at? It'll predict where it thinks it's going to kind of like the max it's going to reach and then plateau. It'll show you all that ahead of time.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's why I like it.
I like that.
Yeah, it's very helpful. I'm going to say it's like 50% of the time it's right, but it gets you close enough where you can kind of figure it out after that point. And it even does like a marching ant imaginary line it draws, kind of showing you where it's going to go to whatever level. And then I do have a couple others. There's one called Riffle. It's kind of like River App, but it has more visuals showing the graph itself in this, and it gives you actual GPS locations of the gauge. And then it also shows you weather conditions, temperature. It goes into wind, time of day, cloud cover, barometric pressure. A lot of people are into all that stuff. But all these things are all right on each page, so I really like that everything's consolidated. It's actually my favorite that I use because, again, I pull up one creek and I have all that information right there. And it's visual. It's got more graphs that I enjoy seeing when I'm
Yeah.
reading.
More of a picture book guy.
I'm a picture book guy. I like pop-ups and all that good stuff. And then one other that's really nice is called Blue Liner Flows, but a lot of these you have to pay. You can only do so many favorites. That's why I like River App. Blue Liner Flows is one of those, but it's got everything. If you want to pay for it, I have not. I just have the free one. It is loaded up. And it's got the name, right? Blue Liner Flows. You can tell
Yeah.
they're just catering to fishermen. But then the other one I was telling you about that is not a gauge app that I really like is called Precip. So it's just PRECIP for precipitation. And I put pins on the creeks that I like that I'm monitoring. And then it monitors how much precipitation it's getting. And this is a free version. You can pay for it and you can get more features just like the other apps. But you can do past 48 hours, past 24 hours, and past 12 hours. And it'll tell you rainfall and snow if you get both. Like right now, I'm looking at a stream. It says in the past 48 hours on my pin, it got 0.31 inches of rain, and then it also just got 3.5 inches of snow. So all that right there, and I can take all that information and I put it together and I nerd out, and that helps me figure out where we're going to go and what we want to fish. I think if you just have Zach's River app, that's more than enough. Like you said, Zach, we've woken up the next day and there was snow melt because there was 6 inches of snow on the ground, or there was precipitation that maybe it came out of nowhere overnight, and creeks change. So we always even check them before we get in the car to actually drive to the stream. Even if we know where we're going,
Yep.
I'm double checking just in case because they can fluctuate fast for a number of reasons. All right. So since we're on this topic of apps and things, I like a radar app. I like watching storm radars, seeing how much is actually sitting on the Erie tribs or sitting on Lake Erie and seeing how much snow or rain is going. So I like My Radar is a pretty cool one. And then I thought a good tip for everyone out there, if you're new to this, check out the Fish Erie website. So I think it's fisherie.com, and it goes over New York, PA, and Ohio, all areas of Erie fishing, steelhead fishing. It gives you stream maps. It gives you a lot of different information that you can really dive in and learn about Steelhead Alley, learn about Erie, steelhead fishing. There's fishing reports. Fish USA does reports every now and then, kind of telling you how the tribs are going all year for steelhead, walleye, bass, things like that. There's links to live cams Also, another tidbit, right, Zach? We check live cams up there.
Yeah.
There's no live cams to the streams we're fishing. There was live cams on Elk Creek, right? But they're shut down. So there was 4 cams that we would monitor and watch people fishing and catching steelhead. But I really used it to see flows, to see how high the creek was rising. If they got a storm, I pulled up those cams and I would watch how high, how blown out it got. And was it fun to watch people catch fish? Yeah, that was cool too. So that was a cool resource, but that's kind of out of commission at the moment. So I'm backtracking. But you can go to the Avonia cam and the Walnut cam. Walnut, big popular stream up there. I'm not giving away any secrets, but there's a rotating camera that goes all around the parking lot and you can see people fishing there. And then the Avonia cam is where they do the stalking program. So the webcam Trout Run Avonia Beach has a rotating camera as well. And that tiny little tributary, which is off limits, y'all. If you pull up that camera, you cannot fish there. It is illegal. You're allowed to fish in the lake, so you'll see people fishing in the lake, but you'll see thousands of steelhead running up this little tributary on this camera, and it's really awesome to watch. But again, that's where they do their stocking program. They extract fish from there, grab their eggs, and do their whole program for that's Pennsylvania's section. But again, another resource. It's kind of cool. You can see when a lot of people are fishing that lake, steelhead are staging. You can get an idea of that season starting to turn on. So those are just some resources, apps, things that I think can help along the way that I've acquired over time that we all tune into. That again just makes that recon easier, makes dialing in where we want to go more efficient, more accurate, right?
Yeah, you can never have too many tools, right? I mean, we're just giving ourselves the best chance for success. And you can have all these things and, the weather doesn't cooperate and things don't cooperate. If you have any extra dates in mind, or maybe you have a backup plan for a different time you could go, maybe hold off if it's not looking great, and then you can plan for the next time. So it's nice to have all those things, setting yourself up the best you can.
Exactly. There's just too many variables up there. We've
Yeah.
talked about all of these things. You want to try to solve those equations as best you can, have an answer or have multiple answers for potential outcomes, and having all these tools, having these apps, this information just helps you solve those equations quicker. But like you said, not always accurate. Sometimes you just roll with it. That's fishing though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully there's still some snow up there when we're there. That's what
I want to fish in the snow.
Me too, man. And I love a nice flurry.
Absolutely.
Snow on the ground, flurrying. You're in some steely water, and you hit that whale, and it's on. I don't know if it gets better than that. All right. So we've been talking about our gear. We've been talking about the things that we're taking with us, some of the little extras that I call them necessities now because they've proven to be very effective. As we're getting into the weeks leading up, you're starting to get on the vise and we're starting to go through our fishing stuff and organize, remove certain things that we may not need for these trips, switching up fly boxes. What are some of the main things that you focus on when you're getting that prep ready? How far in advance do you start prepping? You're a little bit less nuanced, but you have a proven system over time. So where are you at with a lot of that stuff? And then maybe we can dive into a little bit more detail on the vice and stuff like that.
I think the first thing I do is whatever is in my box for trout fishing that I do not need, like my dry fly boxes, just anything I'm not going to need. I know for a fact I'm not going to run into a scenario that I need it. I'm getting it out of there. Again, we need all the room we can get. I go through my bags because after a long trout season, I try to maintenance my bags and try to maintenance my boxes, but they can get a little messy. I got power bar wrappers and all that. I clean all that stuff out. I find stuff in there sometimes. I'm like, where the hell was that? You know how many full cans of chew? I always find some presents in my bag. But yeah, I get all that stuff out of there. Um, and then after that, I'm tying at a rapid rate.
Well, hold on. Before we go down that path, what about checking reels, checking your rods, checking leaders? Are you tying up leaders? Let's go down that pathway first.
I always stock up on leaders. And when I say stock up, I'll carry like 2 extra full systems. I buy pre-made leaders. I have been using the pre-made ones from Lively Legs. Just the same ones I use on a trout stream, I use on the Steelhead stream. I might up the strength. I might go from a X to a 3X or something like that.
Okay.
There's just one less thing. I could tie my own. To me, it's convenient. They're already built in the pack. I know exactly what they're going to be. Just retie that perfection loop right onto my system and I go. But full leader setups up to the tippet ring at least. My reels, I use my 4 weight now, so my reel is going to be the same as it was during trout season. It's just a matter of making sure I don't have any weak points. Like, how old is the stuff that's on there? Is it only trout season old? Is it because I'll keep my stuff on for a full 12 months. I don't change it often. So I'll put a freshie on, I'll put a fresh one on so I'm set up. And then also get my extra reels out, get my extra rods out. We've seen rods break. We've watched guys' rods break up there for a multitude of reasons, but getting those out and making sure I'm stocked up on weight. I have a lot of weight. You know what I mean?
Real quick, when you go up on a trip, how many setups are you taking? Are you taking a backup rod, a backup reel?
Yeah, one backup rod, one backup reel. My 7 weight will be my backup, and I have one backup reel for it. And that'll be fully set up and ready to go.
Yeah, I say two of everything. You
Yeah.
should have two of everything. You don't want to be up there without a rod or a reel, the two main things you need. But if you stick with that, you should be good. And then you said extra weight. Do you vary a lot of different weight sizes, or do you go like one or two sizes? I use a lot of size 4 and size 6. It's actually like the only two sizes I use. And I use more 6s in trout, more 4s in bigger weight for steelhead. But I like having two sizes, 3 at the most. Are you similar?
Yep. Yeah, I'm carrying two sizes. It's usually 4s and 6s, and I roll with that. You don't want to run out of weight up there. You don't want to be the guy bumming weight. That's one of those things you can forget about.
You can totally forget about it. And I always take up at least one extra of both sides. If there's 40 and 50 in one of those, I have another 40 or 50 in my stuff just in case. You might drop it and spill those, right? You can spill a thing of split shot easy. So it's not even about losing or needing all of it. It's just in case something happens to
Yeah,
it.
hands are cold. You don't have much dexterity. You could easily dump it.
And you can also use a lot of split up there.
Could be one of those weeks where you're losing 100 flies and 500 weights.
Yeah. Hopefully, at least you're catching fish, though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hopefully.
So, what about tippet? How much tippet do you take up there in terms of what sizes are you transitioning from on your spool from trout to steelhead? Are you condensing? Are you going only like two sizes?
I run X pretty much. Yep, 4X fluoro. I run it all year long for trout, and then I run it as well for steelhead.
Okay, so real quick, you go from your tippet ring 4X first fly, 4X point fly, or are you going beefier,
4X the whole way. Yep, 4X to the top fly,
even
then right.
steelhead?
Yes, I don't use anything.
Interesting.
I never use 3. I've never used 2. I only use 4.
Man, I mean, I think that's fine. I don't see anything wrong with that. Steelhead, I go up to 3x on my top section. I just like the especially if we're in cloudy, hazy water. There's no reason for me to not. But it's confidence, right? We say it all the time. We'll continue to say it. You're confident in that 4x. It's what you know works, and it's definitely strong enough. I like 3x in most occasions. If it's gin clear, I'm definitely 4x up there with you.
And I will say honestly, now using the 4X or using the 4 weight rod, I can kind of get away with
Mm,
it a little more because that flex in my rod. If you have a stiff
yeah,
rod in 4X and you set the hook good and there's no bend, it could snap. But now
good point.
using the 4 weight, I have a little bit more bend and a little bit more action there, so that can kind of make up for that. Where I have a little more margin for error, especially with the way I set the hook. Right?
Yeah, your tippet's protected.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do always have a full spool of tippet for trout. It's usually like 3x to 6x on my spool, fluorocarbon, but I always have a little mono, a couple sizes of mono in my bag for trout. I don't carry mono for steelhead, all fluorocarbon. And then I do go beefier. I switch out on my spool. I go down to 1, 2x all the way to 5 just in case, but because I've fished steelhead with 5x on the bottom plenty of times. But I do kind of rotate, go a little bit beefier in general. I don't think steelhead are leader shy really. I don't think they really care. So again, it's confidence. It's what I like. You fish what you like, and I think when you are not questioning what you have on, you don't even think about it breaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you got on 5x and you never fish 5x, you're going to think about it more. At least, that's the way I think about it.
Kyle, you can't be scared, dude. You can't be scared, right? It's my
Don't
biggest
live in
thing.
your fears.
Don't be afraid, right?
I tell my students, don't live in your fears. They'll be like, I don't want this glaze to look bad. I'll be like, don't live in your fears. Just go for it. You got it. So when you're getting your stuff ready, all of our fishing gear is always together. Even if it's not together, it's always together in our mind. We know exactly where it is, what we need when we need it. Even if one thing's in the truck or whatever. There's been times, it's been very, very rare, but one or two times where my life's just so busy with a newborn baby or something like that at the time, I've gotten up to the hotel. We rig up our rods generally the night before in the room as we're drinking a beer and talking, and I haven't looked at my gear well enough, and I've regretted it. So I make sure I am very meticulous. I lay it all out. I lay out my clothing. I lay out my rods and reels next to each other as I'm getting ready to load it all up, and I make sure it's kind of all set in stone. I organize my fly boxes. I take boxes out. I even consolidate some. I have like a Steelhead streamer box where I put my leeches in there, some white deaths or whatever you want to call them, and things like that. But I don't need my whole streamer box.
Yeah.
I don't need fish streamers that much for Steelhead, period. So I only need a small little box of them. I only need my thin nymphing box and my egg box because we're already carrying so much other stuff out there with us. You don't want to be carrying extra fly boxes if you don't need them. But I think for me, it's really important to lay it all out and visually see it. And then I can kind of check it off in my brain. And then I'm just more comfortable. And the last thing you want to do is get up there and you are missing something. And then I run my same leader system. The only thing I have done is beefed up my transition segments because I build my own leaders, like 22, 24-foot leaders. But now I don't see a reason to. It's a beefy enough leader, 25-pound butt, different sections, but it is basically the same system I use for trout. But I do like to tie up a freshie for the steelhead season. Unless one gets absolutely annihilated on a trip, which can happen, they can bang off some rocks and really beat up a leader. So I always check it. Check your leaders, right? You're getting ready to go out that morning at least. Make sure those leaders don't have nicks in them. Make sure your tippet doesn't have a nick in it. That's the last thing you want to do is break off a fish and it was your fault because you didn't check if there was nicks or anything. So I do check. I like to put on a freshie and kind of check it per trip, per basis. So Zach, you were talking about you do mostly pre-made leaders, which a lot of people do. I think that's normal. Dave fishes your standard 9'5" extruded leaders, tapered leaders. He's fishing indies mostly up there. He's doing some, what would you call it? Not tight lining, but he's
Yeah.
dead drifting his line. But he's using indicators up there as well. So when I'm building my leader, it's something I've been tweaking for years now. The cool thing is with leaders, right? There's a lot of different styles that you can build. It's a preference thing. I go OPST. I love OPST. Do you still use OPST?
What am I using now? Yeah, I'm using Amnesia right now. Yeah, but I do love OPST. I used the OPST for years.
Yep,
But I think we mentioned this before. It was hard for me to get a hold of,
that's right.
so
That's
I
right.
switched to the Amnesia.
And I build Amnesia into mine, so I like Amnesia too. But yeah, OPST is just kind of cool. I think it is basically like a Skagit style. It's got this influence of Pacific West Coast steelhead fishing, swinging, that style. With this OPST material, it has like very little memory to it. It's very bendable, pliable. They have what, two colors, pink, green. So I build mine. I do usually twice the length of my rod. So if I have a 10 or 11-foot rod, I'm going 20 to 22 feet, usually 25-pound. And normally you don't need to go that heavy for a butt section. You could go 15-pound easy, 20-pound max, but the OPST is like super thin. It is just different than your Amnesia or your Maxima, right? Everyone's using Maxima, a lot of Maxima out there. I just go beefier because I can. So 25-pound, and I am connecting that to a fly line. So I have a Steelhead Orvis Hydrus fly line. Just in case I ever want to put a basic leader on or something, I loop to loop it, and I like having that fly line just in case. And then I am using basically blood knots throughout the top system. First section of Amnesia, so usually like 12 to 14 inches. So if I have pink OPST, I usually I flip my Amnesia color. So I'll go like a chartreuse green section of Amnesia, and that's usually 12 to 15 pounds. Then I do the lower section. I'll do the red Amnesia, so I'll bump down a few pounds in that, and then blood knot, and then that goes to my cider. So then I go like a 9-pound cider line. So essentially, with my two pieces of Amnesia and my cider, which is a bicolor cider, so it transitions from like green to orange as well, I end up with almost a 3-4 foot leader in the whole thing. And I do that intentionally because if I'm tight lining, and anyone who tight lines out there, we can adjust so much quicker. So if I build a much longer cider, if I am in 3 feet of water, 2 feet of water, I can read it. If I'm in 8 feet of water, I can read it. Building that extended cider with the Amnesia into the actual bicolor cider, I really like having that flexibility of dropping or raising my rod tip for any situation, and I can just read it quicker and more efficiently. And then I go to a tippet ring. Tippet rings are great, right? If you ever do snag, a lot of times it at least breaks from that tippet ring on. So tippet ring, and then I will just clinch knot my sighter to the tippet ring, and then I'll clinch knot a piece of fluorocarbon. I usually go like 4 feet of fluorocarbon. I'm usually using 4X up top, but if I know it's going to be hazy water, I'll probably go 3X, or if we're on much bigger water, I will go 3X as well, because you have that luxury for bigger water, bigger structure, and honestly, even potentially bigger fish in that water. I bump up to 3X. Fluorocarbon, then to my fly, usually an egg. My favorite colors to tie up, I like multicolored, dual color egg patterns. I like a little flash tied in. And then my favorite colors are like pink and orange. I like to switch up with chartreuse in there too. Chartreuse is usually my fallback variation. And again, that could be pink and orange combo, chartreuse and orange combo, chartreuse and pink, orange and light roe. I also like a light cream with salmon in there. So I vary it up. But I think I use 7, 8, 9 patterns that I kind of switch up.
Do you find that I noticed this year? I feel like every year I go, I develop some new pattern of egg. I use a new color combo. I feel like eggs is one of those things that like you could have two colors, even if it's chartreuse and orange. Like it might look one way when it's dry, but then it gets wet and it always looks good. I'm like, man, this will work. This is a good egg pattern.
It's so funny that your example is chartreuse and orange, because that's the new color I tied up this year.
I find a new pattern every year. I'm like, oh, this will look good.
I just tied them up yesterday, chartreuse and orange. And it's nothing, that's nothing like crazy or unique, but it is not a color that I've usually tied up. And yep, that's the I'm with you though. There is usually a different color combo that I'm like, oh yeah, that'll get them. That's steely. That's juicy. Yep, there's usually something different.
Yeah, because I feel like usually what will happen is like, one of us will tie up a color that either the masses don't have or the other one didn't tie. So I'm like, what'd you catch it on? And you're like, purple and whatever. I'm like, well, I ain't got none of that. And then it seems like they key in on that color and then I don't have it. And the good thing about Steelhead is they could be on that color for this hour and then all of a sudden it changes. I think it's funny how that works. And so I feel like at least once on a trip, it'll be an egg or something I don't have. The one thing I don't have, you know.
There is always like a random color, and it's always something you're just like, wait, what? We've even hit times where it's been dead for a couple hours, maybe a bite here and there, but real slow downtime. And then someone hits one or lands one, and they're like, what'd you do different? They're like, I just put on something with a gold bead. And literally, the rest of us throw on anything with a gold bead, and
Yep.
that's what they key in on. It can be that unique, that interesting in the way they can be that selective. If they are on something, odds are in an hour they're on something else. So it can switch just like that, which is kind of fun. I like that game of it. We get into them, we're banging them out, we're having a great time for an hour, 2 hours. We're in this run, and it goes cold, shuts down, and all the things we're using are not working anymore. And someone figures out that next code, that next password, so to speak, and we always share that information. We solve those equations much faster using that recon. But again, it's just interesting how all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's this color, oh, it's this pattern. They just change up quick, right? It's not like, oh, they're on the caddis hatch or they're on blue-winged olives or whatever, where it's, it can be timed like that, but it's just different, where these fish can literally be by the minute. They're like, yeah, I want this. Never mind, I want that over there. And it's just random. So yeah, just finishing up my leader build. Usually eggs on top. Sometimes switch it up a little bit early season in steelhead, but pretty much egg the whole time on top. And then we talked about this before. I like to go stonefly patterns usually on the bottom to start, but always switching it up with something flashy, something bright, different colors. I don't use as many colored beads like you do, but I do have them, and it is something that's on my radar. I do tie up some things. I like purple beads, and I like a lot of black. So switch it up, but dive into the copper johns, those warriors, like we said, stone flies, things like that, and your normal trout flies, and you'll be good to go on bottom as well. And then tying up a lot of weight, right? I'm tying my flies heavy. That's why I tie my own flies. I like to tie them so I know exactly how much they weigh. I know the taper, the body, the style, exactly the way I want it, on the hook I want it, but putting a lot of weight, whether it's lead wraps, large tungsten beads, getting them heavy, getting them down as fast as we can, right? You've been on the Vice for a few weeks now, hitting it hard, getting ready for our first trip. I finally got back on the Vice. I've been starting my prep. What's your mentality going into it this year? Have you dialed in on specific styles, or variations? And then what's your mentality for weight and things like that? Are you doing multiple variations? Are you kind of sticking to one or two sizes? I know, Zach, you are big on certain colored beads and they can be very, very effective. So, what's your mentality on the vise in terms of quantity, size, numbers, style, profile leading up to that trip? What's your goal, I guess? Where are you at?
My goal is to tie flies until I don't have material anymore. So it's like I tie as many as possible. Like, and then when I run out of a certain pattern that I'm tying up, I'm just like, all right, and then I make up another pattern in my head I think would be good that I have material for, and I bang those out.
Yeah.
So this year I've tried to simplify it. I don't want to have a ton of different size beads. I would always try to make everything more simple. So right now I tie two different variations of what will be my point fly, which are on 4 millimeter beads, right? And this year I tried to base it off of another pattern we use. It's a pheasant tail pattern with some CDC collar, and then I have one that has a big pink bead on the head, another one that has black. So I'm running like a brighter, flashier, flamboyant kind of pattern, and then I'm running a black, bluish pattern with the same principles, same size bead, same size everything else. In my brain, those are going to be my point flies the whole time I'm there. Um,
Quick, your body profile of them, and I know the flies you're talking about. I'm assuming it would connect to sync rate, right? Or is it more
mhm.
just designed for you?
It's a slimmer profile on the body because I want it to get down quick. Slim profile body and then a bigger bead, so we're nosediving getting that thing down as quickly as possible. So it's just a pheasant tail pattern on a size 10, but I use the same amount of wraps I would use on the size 14. I'm still using that same amount of fibers, 4 or 5 pheasant tail fibers to keep that slimmer profile on the body. And then kind of like a beefier CDC hackle, and then the big bead. And as far as the beads for steelhead,
Yep.
I'm only tying up black beads, pink beads, and silver beads, and that's all I put on anything this year. No gold beads.
No purple?
I lied. There is purple. I lied. So purple, pink, black, silver. I have been tying the pink as of late, so that's what's on my mind. But I did tie up a bunch of purple and some smaller stuff. But as far as my point flies, they're all black and pink beads this year. And then my top flies that wouldn't be my eggs, which will be more like lighter warriors or lighter, flashier patterns. I put like same thing, either black or purple beads or silver beads on those. Um,
You mentioned Flash, Rainbow Warriors, one of our favorites up there. What are you building into these patterns? Are you adding Flash? Are you giving any sparkle to them?
so honestly, I try to like make up a new pattern every year. Like, the Warriors are going to be the same. Like they're always going to be the same. I'll tie them in a variation of colors that I wouldn't normally use throughout like the trout season. Like I'll tie them in blues and purples and blacks. But honestly, every year I kind of like make up a pattern, like a tester pattern. I had success on a pattern a couple years ago that I only tied like 4 of because it was like just kind of experiment type thing. And it was a blue rainbow warrior with an orange collar on it. And I had a lot of success on it, but I didn't have that many of them. So it was my hot fly, and then I lost them. So this year I tied up quite a bit more of those. And then again, I'll just kind of play around and mix and match colors and find something that I like, and I'll tie an experimental out. We'll see if this works. And if it does, I just add it to the arsenal for the next year and maybe take one out that didn't work. Um, but again, the name of the game, it doesn't matter what you're tying. Tie a lot of them, or if you're not, buy them. It's another thing you can't have too much of. You don't know what's going to happen. You could use a quarter of your supply. You could run through damn near all of it. And steelhead waters have a funny way of eating flies. I don't want to be stuck there on the third day or the second day and I'm at the bare minimum of my fly box. I want to have those 4 or 5 confident patterns and tie the shit out of them. And eggs. Eggs is the other one. I'm tying a million eggs.
That's right. You can't have enough. And here's the thing, they're just backups for the next trip. A lot of those flies, we use them for trout anyway in some capacity. So they are not going to waste or save them for next year's steelhead trip. Like split shot, having an enormous amount of flies and not an enormous variety. We all have 5 to 10 patterns, mostly for trout. Same concept for steelhead. Very simplified. We just tie up an absolute crap load of them. And right now, I started tying the first couple patterns. I'm doing some black ninjas and some warriors. I'm starting with a dozen each, and then I'll probably come back if I have time and do hopefully like another dozen more of each. How many ties do you think you're up to prepping for this one steelhead trip?
I'd say I've probably put in 5 sessions of like solid hour to 2 hours of tying, and I'm probably getting anywhere from 12, sometimes 20 flies each of those. So we're talking almost 100 flies close. We're getting up there.
If you're a fast tire, if you're saying 12 to 20 in an hour, I believe you.
Yeah, we're probably around like the 75, 80 mark if I had to guess.
We're tying multiples for the obvious, but up there can be times it's hard to explain, but the way the fish are, the way the conditions are, you have the ability to just lose a ton of flies. To break off fish, to break off snags, not snagging fish, but snagging into rocks and breaking off your leader, breaking off both flies at the same time. You can lose 15, 20 flies in one day easily. It sucks. It's not fun.
And also, sometimes like they just bend the hook out. So like if you're they'll bend out a size 10 jig hook. You know what I mean? So it's like, do you want to risk bending it back and losing some strength and the angles? So it's like I'll just take that one off. I'm just gonna get rid of that one. I'm not gonna risk hooking one and losing it. So
No, I agree.
they'll bend a hook easy.
You don't want to leave any question marks about if you lost a fish. You don't want it to have anything to do with user error. Oh, there was a knot in my tippet, but I just ignored it, let it go. Same concept. So if your hook's been out, it's probably worth it just to switch out the fly, to your point. But I find most of the time I'm losing flies, full leader setups, retying a whole rig, mostly just from snagging from the way we're tight lining, dead drifting in very hazy water a lot. You're tight in there and you're just snagging on a lot of debris that's down deep, and stressing about running out of flies is not something you want to deal with out there.
Yep.
And on the opposite side, there's been times where I've lost like 6 flies all weekend. It just goes right. Fishing is a lot of luck. Steelhead is even more luck. Losing flies, keeping fish on has elements of luck that play a factor. So tie a lot of flies or buy a lot of flies, whatever you're doing, doesn't matter. Buy a lot. Don't cheap out. Don't go up there with 10 flies. Don't waste your time. Definitely need a lot of egg patterns. Get some flashy nymphs that you really like fishing. Copper Johns, Brassies, things like that. Throw out some flash, and you're good to go. Pick out like 5 nymphs, slight variations, different colors, beads, whatever it is, and get like 10 of them each. I know it's a lot of, I'm tying up massive amounts of eggs, and that is partially for all season and from trout, but we're definitely getting ready for that later steelhead season. A lot of eggs, y'all. Tie them up, buy them, whatever you got to do. Load up your fly boxes. And then when I'm tying, I'm going a little bit more variety this year in terms of size variation. Something I'm going to experiment with this year. I want to have a little more variety to take some of my flies that I usually use on the point, and I'm sizing them down to potentially put them on the top, especially in this first trip. So that's my mentality right now. Something a little different than the past.
Can I bring something up here too? If we're talking about differences, um, one thing that I've just picked up from research and then kind of putting it together in my head and it makes sense. So we talked about steelhead are sitting in one column of the water and they're hitting in one zone generally. They're not deviating from that zone. I'm gonna run my flies a little closer together. See what I'm saying? If that top fly don't get down and that's the one they're keying on, I'm not gonna get bit. But if I can get both those flies in that zone and maybe they're only 12 inches apart or less,
Yeah.
right? Now I have both those flies closer to that strike zone and they don't have to go as far to get the other one. Does that make sense? So I'm going to run
Yes, it
them a
does.
little closer this year. So both those flies are very close to that same strike zone. And I don't have my point fly in the strike zone. And then my other one, which is usually an egg, is up top. Also, I do for steelhead, I don't do a lot of in trout. I weight my eggs. I'll put lead wraps on my eggs because I want them down. I want them down deep. So I'm going to run them this year, and it makes sense in my head. Again, from doing my own recon, that I'm going to try seeing if I can see a difference running that rig, that double fly rig closer together. Because in trout, they're eating in 2 different columns of water. You have one fly on top for this column, one down, way down here for this one. It's usually a 24-inch or so gap, right? And my measuring stick is always
Yep.
my hook keeper to my first eyelet is the distance I want between my flies on my trout rod.
Okay. Okay.
I'm going to cut that probably in half and see if that makes a difference.
Yep. Well, to simplify that, right? You're giving them easier access to two options. You're putting those two flies more directly in their face. If you're in that line, let's say you're searching for fish or you found fish, it doesn't matter. We have a better idea of where these fish are sitting most of the time, so you're guiding those flies. And if you're closer together, if you're 12 inches instead of 18 inches, which we usually tighten up in the winter in general, but now you have those two snacks more directly in that zone where you want them, like you just said. That I think I've naturally always tightened up in the winter and for steelhead. So if they can only see one and they don't want that singular fly, then, maybe they're not eating. But if they have those two options, oh, fly A, they're like, that's not what I'm into right now. But then they're like, ooh, but fly B, that's juicy. Yeah, good thought, good mentality. I like it. Put more options in there. We dove into getting our gear ready. Again, two of everything, tying a bunch of flies, hitting the vise hard, getting your confidence patterns in there, what you like, how you want to approach them, how you're thinking about the stream. And here's another thing. I think a lot of times the answer is we are tying the same flies, but sometimes I do put in some extra heavier stuff, like you said, a weighted egg or a bead for some of that bigger water that we do end up on. And,
Mhm.
and whether it's higher water or just bigger water makes a big difference. And then anything else, Zach? Anything we're missing? Tools, materials. What about headlamps?
Yeah. I mean, unless you're not getting out there until the sun's already up, then you don't have to worry about it. But for us psychos that are up at 4 in the morning, it's going to be dark when you're walking in there. And a lot of the times, our access points, we're walking down mountains into gorges somewhere. So you need a headlamp to go in. I mean, I guess you don't need one. Makes it a lot easier, makes it a lot safer.
It helps. We go on there's some not super far walks.
Some like billy goat paths that like you need it because you could slip and fall.
Exactly. And sometimes we're getting down there and then walking on the slate in the dark too, right?
Yep. And again, we're familiar with these creeks, but not
Right.
super familiar. So any kind of visibility when you're going in that early. And then we fish till dark. So if you want to push those limits and fish till dark and you're half a mile in somewhere, having that headlamp to make that trek back, you don't want to be hoping for moonlight to guide you back.
Yeah. Although that can help. Hey, what do I always say? There is a last light bite where those fish will hit. I always buy into that. I'm looking for that last light bite and hopefully scooping one more before I can't see. But yeah, there's again, sometimes we are, pretty deep in it and having that light on our way out is a necessity. Otherwise, you're getting lost and you're just staying out there for the next morning.
Yeah. I guess the only other thing we're missing now at this point is fish. We've done everything.
That's it.
Left is fishing now.
And they've gotten rain, they've gotten flows, much better than last year leading up to this point. So hopefully the fish are there, but
Yeah.
there's only one way to find out.
Hopes are high, so let's hope the flows aren't.
Hopes are high, keep the flows at bay though. Should be good. So yeah, that's gonna wrap us up, I think, for part two of your steelhead prep. We got you set up. I think if you kind of pick and choose what you need, take bits of information that help you along the way, whatever that is, we laid it out the way we do it, and it works for us. And we've built this up over time. So take some of this information and hopefully it makes your trip a little bit more successful, a little bit easier, and then you can focus more on time on the water. And that's the whole point. We do all this stuff, all this prep work, do all this recon so we can focus our time when we get on the water and catch fish. And then after that, right, Zach, we're going to do some episodes about the trips, some post-trip talk, get into our days out there on the water, how it went, trials and tribulations, what went well, what struggled. I'm sure we'll have some good stories along the way, whether we get some other guys in there for that storytelling to be continued. But we will start getting some of the crew in here for some of these episodes in the future and go from there.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. That's going to close us out for part two, Steelhead trip prep and planning. We'll catch you guys soon. And if you are getting out on the water, if you're getting out on some steel tribs, good luck out there. Hope you get into them. Take it easy, everyone. Steelhead Alley Podcast. We'll talk to you soon.